Atal Vajpayee once said, "Our nuclear weapons are meant purely as a deterrent against nuclear adventure of an adversary." Keep this in mind as we discuss today a recent report about China's building of 100 or over 100 nuclear silos, and what does it mean for the geopolitical landscape in that part of the world. My name is Dr. David Oualaalou.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
We'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for subscribing. It really helps us a lot to get the message out.
And also we want to thank our Patreon members for their support. To our Patreon members, we want just to inform you that we will be doing live Zoom exclusive presentation about the geopolitics in the 21st century. So if you are interested, consider joining our membership on Patreon.
The geopolitical landscape is forever fascinating.
Indeed, Ross.
119 building sites in one of the deserts in China. David, what do you make of that?
That's correct. Those are the recent images from the James Martin Non-Proliferation Research Center. It's a non-proliferation one in Monterey, and they have the commercial satellites that picked up those images. Well, those images are the construction of the silos for nuclear ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. So that was the interesting aspects of it, that those commercial satellites indicated that China is in the process of building about 119 to 120 new silos.
Well, in addition to the nuclear arsenal that they've already got, what does it bring the total to?
Well, usually the United States is aware of 16 sites. That's what the United States is aware of. Those are already completed, and of course that's what we are aware of. What's the interesting, just for you to know, what are we talking about here is this. Those silos are not completed yet. They are in the process of being built up. What's fascinating about these two things, one of them is that some of them has been completed in the last 6 months. And second thing is the speed by which China is building those silos. And that's what makes it very, very interesting. So those commercial satellite images, it's showing that the block of the silos close by, which is very unusual.
There are a lot of questions about this.
You're absolutely correct, Raz.
You know, one of the things is this a reflection or an extension of President Xi's speech at the centennial of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah, because the West has interpreted that as China being aggressive and so forth.
As opposed to, we're standing our ground, stop humiliating us and stop pushing us.
That's good. Well, it is hard to tell at this point, because here is the thing. Everybody in the West is scratching its head because they don't know what is the significance of these silos.
Yeah.
And for these two main reasons. One of them is that the current images show that the silos that they're being built are only about 3 kilometers between each
And they're
one.
typically a lot further away from each other.
It's between 10 to 20 kilometers, which means what? If China is building these 120 silos at close proximity, it makes them easy target.
Yeah.
And nobody will ever think, militarily speaking, if you are building silos, you're not going to build them close by. Those are easy targets. So that's one of the things. Second thing, there are some analysts who are saying that this is nothing but a decoy. A decoy for what? And that's why nobody could confirm exactly what it is.
Yeah.
We don't seem to claim that we know the answer, because we don't.
Right.
We don't. That's the whole idea. We wanted just to present this to highlight that those are major when it comes out to the nuclear deterrence or nuclear posturing. Yeah, building 120 silos it's no small matter.
And what we know is that China has the missile capability of hitting any place in the world in about half an hour.
Yeah. Well, that has to do with a specific type of missiles. Those are the DF-41, where those silos will be deployed from. The advantage to them, they go between 7,400 to 9,300 miles.
In half an hour.
Yeah, which means it will reach the United States within 30 minutes.
That sounds like a big deterrent to me.
Yeah. And just the idea of why those are important, because the DF-41 missiles, the ICBMs, there is some sort of analysts, they are not agree among themselves as to how many warheads they can hold. Well, some say those missiles, the ICBM, the DF-41, can hold between 6 to 10 nuclear warheads. Some other analysts saying, no, China exaggerated that. They can only hold about 3 nuclear warheads. It won't matter, because all it takes is 1.
Right.
So,
Well, let me ask you a clarifying question with this. As goes it being a deterrent, how effective is that?
well, if it is a deterrent, yes, it is, because, again, I am not saying 100% it is, because you wouldn't want to build silos that close, because it becomes an easy target, as we said.
Right.
But if we are to just proceed with the conversation as to the silos being a deterrent, yes, they are. And there are reasons to all that. Given what's taking place in Southeast Asia, it was taking place in the South China Sea,
Right.
was taking place now with the withdrawal of the U.S. forces from Afghanistan, with the tensions between China and India on a border. All this, China is, and what you mentioned earlier about the speech of Xi during the centennial anniversary,
Right.
all this suggests that China is not holding back. Some have one as far as saying, is China being aggressive? I don't see that being aggressive.
Well, as I listened to his speech, it certainly seemed to me he said, we're here to take care of ourselves and not be pushed around anymore. I didn't hear any aggression, but I've heard lots of commentators say it's a very aggressive speech.
Yeah, in the West, it's been interpreted as being aggressive. But just to think in terms, to go back to the point of what is the significance of these silos, nobody knows. Really, nobody knows as of today. But again, the idea of deterrence, that is a possibility, with the assumption that if the silos were built between the 10 and 20 kilometer distance, and there is also another reason to all this. It has to do with Taiwan. Yeah, none other than that, because
You know, there have been a lot of questions about Taiwan. They're saying, well, how come China is so intent on dealing with Taiwan in an aggressive way? Well, I think there's news behind the news here. And what do you think of that?
well, that's correct, Russ, because all you hear from all the joint statements from South Korea, for example, from Suga, the prime minister, I believe, of Japan.
Yeah.
From the G7, from NATO, everything has to mention Taiwan. So you can just see China is kind of like, we better think about this. But there is also strategic reason to why that is.
You know, most people, they hear the surface structure of this, and they don't really understand that so much trade goes through the South China Sea. And Taiwan has the capability of really jamming that thing up.
That's correct, because the South China Sea, where 40% of China's energy comes through.
Oh.
So you can just see why, for example, and we're going to be doing a show about the Philippines and China, and why China is very, very concerned about all that stuff. Can you just imagine, for example, the United States opening a base in Philippines? And that choking, and this is why China is concerned. It's because if the choking points within the South China Sea, including the Strait of Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait, then that becomes a problem for China.
Well, if it starts to reduce the amount of energy that's being brought into China, it's really problematic.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons why now you start to see even the language within the West manifesting China's behavior as very, very aggressive. I mean, even for us in the United States, we start to see within the national security concerns has to do with China's aggressiveness, especially in telecommunication or the 5G technology and so forth. So you start to, there are those who are saying, well, those are, two separate issues, and they are indeed, because, for example, the competition over the microchips.
Oh boy, is that a big one?
Yeah, and to the United States, that's a national security issue. So is China doing this build-up for the silos to secure the microchips? That's a possibility. Is it do it because of
to deal with Taiwan?
Yeah. So, but I don't see that. Those are two separate things on two separate tracks. This issue of the silos, assuming they are for, we don't know yet. There is no confirmation yet. But if they are, those are of geopolitical nature. That's where the challenge to all that.
Well, as we take a look at China and we take a look at this supposed aggression, another stance on this is they're just taking care of themselves.
And that is, for example, this stance, what you just said, Ross, it's very clear when you think, for example, of ASEAN countries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And ASEAN countries is thinking from that perspective because they are now in a position, they've been put in a position to choose between the United States or China.
Oh, and boy, they don't like that.
They don't like it.
They want to do business, not take sides in a conflict.
And that's the whole reason why they went ahead and signed the treaty back in 1971, to make it clear they don't want to be put in that position. That is the whole idea. And you take, for example, Philippines, which we're going to do a show on that one in more detail. Well, Philippines, it's almost cut between, Filipino people. They are interested in the West and so forth. Their president, Duterte, understands the tensions with China, but also understands the economic incentives. So, and he's not going to risk it by allowing the U.S. to establish a military base on Philippine soil. So that is where I see those dynamics playing out. And China is just pre-positioning itself, or has been pre-positioning itself, to ensure that access to waters are not blocked.
Well, they're taking some pretty darn solid, and making some solid moves to take care of that. I mean, also, the question is, are there other motives for putting in those building sites, even if they don't put missiles in them?
Well, that could be just to send a signal to the world that China is ready to take on whomever. There are those who said, well, if the United States or Russia attack China, and well, first of all, Russia is not going to attack China.
Right.
Let's clear that up. So to China is thinking in terms of, just in case, because as I said earlier, all the joint statements, all of them have the word Taiwan in them. So China's being proactive in ensuring ahead of time that waterways or the Strait of Taiwan, it's not blocked. And this is where the concern, I believe, if I am to think of this, to why China is doing what is doing with the silos.
Do you think it's effective?
It's hard to tell at this point. If you're talking about a strategy, yes, it could be, because the neighboring countries, first of all, they're going to have to think twice about deciding what to do. That's going to put them in a position of, which direction we're going to go. And this is where ASEAN countries made it clear they don't want to be caught in the middle of it. They want to do trade with China. They
have to.
Yeah, that's what they care for. And seems to me, based on the reading that I've conducted recently, they are leaning into that direction. Mind you, when you have an economy of over $3 trillion, and you're going to have to think in terms of...
Some people think that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any evidence that China is putting pressure on ASEAN? Or is it...
No.
It's probably... Is it exclusively the West that says you need to side with us?
It's the West that is putting that. I didn't come across anything so far that indicate that. But it's the West because we've seen this with India, for example.
Oh, yeah.
India is an example. We've seen it with Australia.
Yep.
Yeah. Japan. you know.
Yeah.
But we saw also with South Korea, but South Korea made a decision.
You know, you talk about proximity to China, you don't get any closer than Korea.
No, and I'm convinced that their decision is economically based, strategically, of course, but is economically driven, I shall say,
Right.
because that's why they didn't know. Philippines is falling into the same category. Mind you, that the Philippines has had some issues with the United States regarding, for example, upgrading its air force. Well, guess what? Philippines still did just get the delivery of F-16s. Well, F-16s, or F-18s, that is, one of the other, that's been in the talks since the 80s. So you can just see.
It's been like 30 to 40
Yeah,
years
so-
in the talks.
So the Philippines is thinking in terms of what's good for us, economically speaking, and is seeing that the trade with China, because we always say this, Ross, that you cannot ignore the Chinese economy, the sheer size of the market. And countries in the region are reconsidering their positions.
You know, there's a bottom line here, and the bottom line is every one of those countries in the region has major trade agreements with China.
Well, because we always say that the economic hub of the global economy, that is not Europe, is not the United States, is Asia.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
with the lead, China taking the lead on that. That's the bottom line to this.
For our viewers, what would you say the biggest takeaway here is in terms of understanding the situation
Yeah.
with this 100+ possible missile silos?
The silos. Well, just we shouldn't jump to conclusions right away. All of a sudden we're saying, oh my gosh, they're going to be putting, yes, the F-41s can reach the U.S. within 30 minutes, but we shouldn't be jumping to conclusions on this because we do not know.
Right.
We do not know yet. Personally, and this is my personal opinion, it doesn't make sense to me that you build the silos that close. As I said, and I repeat it again, it becomes an easy target. That doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know. So the West is, they don't know. They don't know what it is.
Well, there is a conclusion here because President Xi and these now these.
Yeah.
Well, my Mandarin tutor pronounced it C.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And we got some comments advising me to call him President C. So I checked the Mandarin, and it is actually President C.
That's it. Yeah, thanks you for the correction for that.
Well, thanks to our viewer for hiding it.
Yeah, they did. As a matter of fact, they did one about Xinjiang. Xinjiang. They said we didn't pronounce it correctly, and thank
We're
you for
doing
that.
our best at pronouncing these
I
things, and
know.
it's really challenging
Yeah.
for us. Here's the bottom line, and that is with President Xi's speech, with these missile silos, there's no going back for China. They're standing their ground.
Yeah, I don't see that happening ever because that era is gone. So the world, I guess, the rest of the world will have to come to grip with the reality that China is a rising power. So we just have to accept it.
Don't forget to like, share, and mostly subscribe to our channel. It really helps us a lot in terms of viewership if you take the action of subscribing. Thank you for watching.
And as always, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.